Hey there, YouTube. I'm Ikitsu. This is Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Stylat, I believe is how you pronounce that, missile corvette. This is the new unit for tech, which is pretty interesting. Now, I think that this is a sort of strange unit in terms of where it sits in the tech tree, but I can also sort of see why it sits where it sits, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So for statistics, we're looking at a durability of 0, which is typical for corvettes. It's got 345 armor points, 300 hull points, which is pretty fragile. It's got 2 medium missile launchers, 5.3 damage per second at 400 pierce each for a total of 10.6 damage per second, which is pretty good. And for hidden statistics, we're looking at armor strength of 40 and a maximum speed of 1,000, which is just as fast as the Shriken. So the Stylat missile corvette is pretty expensive for a corvette, but probably worth the price all around there. It's got a supply cost of 4, which is what's really expensive about it. That's very, very high for a Corvette. It's got a price of 245 credits, 25 alloys, and 55 crystal, which the crystal in particular is a pretty big hit for its cost, but it's not that bad. But yeah, I do think that these things are a little bit pricey for how fast you're potentially going to be losing them, because they are very, very fragile. So this thing is something you can unlock fairly early on the tech tree. It's at tier 2, very early in tech 2. And what makes this interesting is that with 400 Pierce, what this is really ideal at killing is the heavier cruisers, which don't usually appear until tech like 4. You can get some of the more medium cruisers like Tech 3, but for the most part, most factions you're not going to be facing off against stuff that have a requirement of 400 Pierce at the tech level that you're getting the Stylat missile corvettes. However, there are some interesting things that are corvettes that you can encounter in Tier 2, and they mostly appear from the Advent. And I do think that the Stylat is probably in Tech 2 as a anti-Advent tech, where you can use the Stylat in the late game to fight things like Harkas. You can't really use them to kill the Ortovas, but you can use them to kill the Harka heavy cruisers or something like that, or you can use them to kill even the Javelises. You are facing off against things like the Iconus Guardian and the Arya Drone Host, which are cruiser level ships that are fairly durable, which you can then kill with the Stylat missile corvette in tier 2. Now, the carriers are not actually that tough. The durability doesn't matter that much there. And technically speaking, the Iconus Guardians don't really need a 400 Pierce attack. But having something like this, I feel like is slotted into that area so that you can go after those targets while still making this a useful unit into the later game when you are facing off against things like the Harka heavy cruisers or something similar to that. Something with the 400 durability tier. They're not really that useful against capitals. Capitals have got 500 durability, which means that you're having the damage down to 5.3 damage per second for these guys. That's not super efficient given how fast they'd get killed off in that kind of fight, and it's capitals primarily that are going to be fighting back against the Stylats at sort of all phases of the game, up until you get a lot of like point defense if you're going for that. For the Advent, they've got the access to a quick item that they're probably going to be getting a little bit more often if they feel like they're going to get attacked by corvettes. That shreds corvettes really badly. The tech faction has access to the flak, which makes it so that the missiles don't do anything. Also, they've got the ability to take the radiation bombs, which are capable of clearing these guys out here quite effectively. Not that they really need it. I think that the flak burst defending and then just killing them with point defense guns is better. But you could take an improved radiation bomb, or you could just take a radiation bomb and kill them all. And for the Vasari, the capital that you start off the game with that you're forced to take has a very good AoE that's good at killing a lot of corvettes. So you wouldn't really want to use these into capitals under most circumstances. I think that they're quite weak into that sort of composition. What they're good at is going to be killing those sort of like hardy cruiser type units. Something like, say, the Javelin LRM, something like the Hoshikos. Those are a little bit squishier than this thing typically would want to target. The things like the Percheron carrier cruiser, way squishier than you would really want to target with this. But it's not really losing out by going after those kinds of targets if you don't find something like a Harko over there to kill. So I do think that this thing remains viable into the later game. It has targets to go after in the later game. if your opponent is going for like an all heavy cruiser build like sort of situation. But in the early game, when you actually unlock the Stylat, I think that you're going mostly after Advent ships if you're going that route. Anyway, let's take a look at the military research for this thing. It does have that speed bonus that you get from enhanced light thrusters here, giving it a very good speed. You've got access to the missiles for once instead of the autocannons. So refined missile avionics doesn't show up until Tech 3, which is really, really late. And then you've got enhanced armor penetration and then cyclotorate payloads. So 10, 20, and 30%. I think that these bonuses are better in a lot of ways on the Javelus, which is going to be sort of your later game solution for a lot of these situations. But if you are going for a build that focuses on the Stylats, these things do still help it quite a bit because, like I said, it does technically scale okay into the late game against certain compositions, and these will help it keep relevant throughout those parts of the game. It is a shame, however, for an early tech unit that you're not getting any upgrades to damage at all until tier 3. That's a little bit harsh. For other upgrades, we're looking at advanced metallurgy, the titanopheric plating, and repellent premium armor, making it so that your unit's a little bit more durable. They don't have enough armor pool for that to really matter that much. Same thing for the hit point pool from fortified superstructure and expert damage control and all that. These bonuses, again, the hull regeneration, again, is a little bit more valuable for these guys because they might be out of combat for long enough for that to trigger. But generally speaking, those hit point values just are so low at base that getting extra is not going to help you all that much. 250 Corvette shield refit bonus hit points is pretty good though. Just as a single upgrade, that's quite a decent amount. Always is for these sort of upgrades. And then you've got the percentage ones that are way, way worse. 250 is not enough to make you like durable, but it will help you survive like a couple shots incidentally, because that is usually how you take damage with these things. And if they are using stuff like radiation bombs or whatever, then that definitely does help because getting hit by a radiation bomb is sort of a matter of like, can you survive like just enough of the stuff to make it make your unit survive that. But in any event, in addition to this, we do have our typical economy ones. We've got the counter deployment, we've got labor negotiations, we've got industrial complex, and we've got industrial juggernaut, making it so you can produce these faster. And then our culture also lets these things go even faster. So yeah, these things, I think they are pretty interesting. I think that they're definitely added as an anti-advent tech. Advent don't have the ability to fight back against the missiles in the early game quite as effectively. They nerfed the Tempest, in my opinion, at when it comes to dealing with Corvettes in the early game against tech in particular. And they've made it so that it's a little bit like more risky, I think, to play as Advent and neglect fighting against Corvettes in general. So I think that the Stylat is definitely mostly going to be good into Advent. However, as people sort of like decide that they don't like them, there are solutions to them at all points of the game. So they're not a catch-all solution. Late into the game, the fact that you can scramble these from SOVA carriers, however, keeps them pretty interesting. If you have got a couple SOVA carriers and you've leveled them up so they can build Corvettes, you can just pump out like a bunch of Stylats if you see your opponent has a bunch of penetrators or Harkas or something like that, and you just want something that's got that 400 pierce to be able to kill them really, really quickly. And fairly effectively, especially because those things can't really fight back against Stylats, or at least they can't fight back effectively against Stylats. So I think that there's definitely some utility to this unit, and that utility can persist into the later game. But you just don't want to rely on this as your sole strategy because they are counterable. Their speed does mean that they can also avoid getting to bad situations, though. So if you do find yourself with a swarm of Stylats, you could always decide to just send them off to go harass enemy buildings. They aren't going to do great damage against them, but damage is going to be reduced to about a third. It's still capable of like pecking away at a couple of buildings and hopefully diverting enemy forces to go deal with them. And if you have enough of these, you could snipe a couple buildings or two, so that your opponent is forced to dilute their forces a little bit. Do I like this more than I like the Javelus? I prefer the Javelus personally, but it's going to come down to what you're up against and your play style. So anyway, that is our video for today. I hope you found this one enjoyable. And of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.